Yeah, maybe we should talk about something serious. Like we were talking about death yesterday, I think. It doesn't really interest me as a topic. It really though. Why does the finite nature of life automatically bring into question the meaning of it? Like people say, "Oh, I'm gonna die." One of my friends, he's quasi-religious. Like he doesn't believe any of the God stuff, but I think that he has like the culture. He's part of an Islamic culture. He's like, "What's the point of life if we all die?" The point of life? I don't know. I think I've maybe abstracted that idea from myself. Like the idea that there's like an overarching theme. That there's lessons to be learned. Or that there's a single lesson, and that lesson corresponds to life, rather than it being kind of unique to the experiences that compose life. Yeah, because when I'm asked what the meaning of life is, I'll automatically assume that implies that there's something that one's supposed to take away from life. But you can't take anything away from life. There's nothing that you take from life after it's over. And I think that's maybe the idea that some people have trouble with. It's that there is no lesson. There is no big capital J justice that happens to everybody where everything is equalized in the end. I think the common thing that I feel is true, but even that isn't really common to everybody, since people have such varied beliefs, is that there is no takeaway because we're all going to die. And even if we didn't die, there would be no common takeaway because everybody takes something different away. Now, it's fascinating, the idea, I guess, that what was I even going to say there? Yeah, there's no common takeaway. But, the idea is fascinating that there would be, it's fascinating, the idea that there would be something transcending our individual beliefs about life in the world, that outside of people's private opinions, there's a truth that kind of exists above and beyond. And it's tantalizing to kind of want to play with that idea, to search for that. Honestly, these the big three religions, they get really close to getting at that, something like that. I mean, maybe in the perfect sense, it's unattainable. It's unattainable to get exactly to like a universal belief. But the whole thing with Christianity was that it's such a compelling idea that it seems to transcend other ideas. It seems to kind of stand above a lot of the individualistic lessons, the individual lessons that one can take away from life. All these diverse backgrounds could be kind of subsumed under the umbrella of a single belief system. And I don't know if the thing with me is I don't necessarily believe that it's kind of like it's not just the merit of the beliefs, but it's the nature of the framing of the beliefs as well. It's the fact that Christianity is written up in a book, and it has the beliefs themselves are compelling, so I'm not trying to say that they're not. they're compelling it out of themselves, but there's like a structure, organization to it. And it's also kind of designed to be spread, like being an apostle, being a disciple. It's an idea that's meant to spread, which is sort of counter to like a lot of knowledge historically, which was kind of intentionally kept hidden, because the idea was kind of like, the idea was to create class systems that benefited the elite by limiting the information that different people got about God, and thereby kind of like artificially inflating the value of a few people and giving them a kind of holy status that made it more intimidating to challenge. Made them more intimidating to challenge. So I mean, there's the difference with Christianity as a religion is that its aim isn't to sequester knowledge. I mean, maybe during the Catholic period it was, and Catholicism is still like, I mean, if you were to separate it out from Christianity, from like the whole of Christianity, I think it's kind of more successful than Protestantism and a lot of New Age versions of Christianity. So it's interesting. Actually, so then Christianity does follow the mold of a lot of ancient religions insofar as it relies on a small elite priesthood, and in the past it relied also on like royalty. There was the Holy Roman Empire, and there was like a very clear union between church and state. And so, contrary to what I just said, it actually did centralize power and authority in a very small elite group. And that served to produce cohesion in the belief system. That was part of the argument on the part of the priesthood for kind of, I guess, limiting the access to like the Bible to Latin readers, and thereby like the upper class, was that you could limit you maintained a structure to how the interpretation of the Bible evolved in time, and that meant that you had a monopoly on essentially the beliefs of the masses, because the priesthood has convinced everybody that they have a special connection with this God. And then, and because they have a special connection, then they're given special privileges to disseminate the truth. And also because they have a special connection, they have also because a small amount of people have a special connection, that group of people gets to decide, and that means you don't have as many mixed voices, and that keeps the whole religion together. Whereas in, I guess, Protestantism, you have like a billion different kinds of interpretations and offshoots and stuff. So, Martin Luther really kind of broke up the church in a lot of ways, and, the Catholics had every reason to be mad at him, especially of, finding all this heretical stuff, etc. So it was actually powerful is the structure. Even Protestantism has like this kind of, it's not as strong as Catholicism was in terms of the centralization under like the archbishops and the priests, archbishops and the popes and stuff like that, but it still has a kind of remnant of that in the pastors and the deacons and stuff like that. And then there's like conferences, and it's organized religion. And then Christianity in particular, Buddhism and Islam, they're all designed to be spread through these different means. So they're kind of like viruses, like mimetic viruses. And that's really not anything new. It's not to take away from the merit of the ideas themselves. It just means that kind of there's more going on than just the ideas themselves. And so that kind of makes for me, that makes it less convincing that the ideas themselves are transcendent of the, are transcendent fundamentally from like regular ideas about life that people would have. They benefit from the centralization, and also because the packaging itself has been, from the centralization, from the like intellectual rigor that went into kind of refining these ideas. Christianity, all these different organized religions benefit from a scholarly rigor that that's kind of refined the ideas over like thousands of years, and kind of improved the packaging. Now, are these ideas like necessarily superior? I mean, I wouldn't say it's just survivorship bias, because I mean, Christianity straight up destroyed a lot of cults. I mean, it could have been actually. So like, I mean, there were a lot of cults in Rome, and so I mean, it could have just been, like one of many of these like liberal, New Age ideas that were coming around at the time. It could have been something like that. And I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't really... Man, you're such a jackass. Like, what a jackass you are. It could have been something like that. I don't know. I wouldn't use that argument as a way to take away from the merit of the ideas of Christianity. Christianity has a lot of, like, better packaged and kind of, like, more like, just well-thought-out ideas than I've ever had. So there is something that's above the run-of-the-mill idea that you get from like a Redditor or something like that, or just kind of like a casual philosopher, because it benefits from like the filtrations of like thousands of years, of like so many scholarly debates. It's a serious topic, and it remains a serious topic in such a large subsect of the human community that there is serious merit to the ideas. And then I guess the reason that those ideas, even though there are merits to them, don't stand like a huge cut above the rest for me, is because I guess my idea of what transcendence is kind of different. Like, I think that for me, all of these different religions have kind of inconsistencies in them that kind of muddle them and make them seem less pure. And specifically in the ethics, and also because straight up everybody has a different idea about it, but also because, I guess the ethics of my time are simply not the same as the ethics of like thousands of years ago, and because interpretations of the Bible and other religious texts, well, I mean, I haven't read Buddhist texts all that much, or Islamic texts. Maybe I'll revisit those, but I've spoken with people that believe in it, so I get a sense of common interpretations in different countries because I'm like in grad school. So my sense is that, like, for one thing, I disagree with some of the ethics of things, but like also I don't exist in the world of those religions, and so I feel, or like I see things that I believe to be inconsistencies in the beliefs, and that kind of brings them back to the real world for me. Again, I lost a point that I was trying to make. It was that the interpretation is very broad, and one thing about like a belief that we're true is the eternal nature of that belief. That's a big pillar of a lot of these like religions, is that like our beliefs have been eternal, and our beliefs have been eternally right. What you see is actually, obviously, like historically, an evolution of interpretations of popular interpretations, or like even among the elites, and those interpretations change over time. And furthermore, it's not just that the elite interpretation varies over time, it's that the interpretation itself, if you say, well, maybe they were wrong about it, it becomes then a broad thing, and then you say, well, what's the meaning of this text? And then it becomes a question, then you begin to ask, like, well, I can come up with a meaning, somebody else has like a slightly different interpretation, and I'm saying for some things, even for things that seem very straightforward, there's like a selectiveness that certain people have in a religion when it comes to interpreting things as being either literal or figurative. And, just straightforwardly, once you get into the weeds of that, then it just, I guess you can throw in the whole towel, because you just get to saying like, well, ethics is complicated. You're gonna have ethics is just highly complicated. And I guess like one thing about, maybe this is probably an issue with like, I think the human mind. It's the same thing happens in physics with this idea that like good ideas tend to be the simplest ideas, the most efficient ideas. Like a sort of idea that is right. This is like more an aesthetic thing than it is a strict rule. Or maybe I should sort of think about like why it isn't just an aesthetic thing. But like I'll say for now it's an aesthetic thing. It's that a good idea is good in the weeds, and it's good from a high level. And I guess when I say good, I mean it functions, not just functions, but it encapsulates well, convincingly, some elements of reality. So like the idea reflects reality in some compelling way, and the explanation exhibits a kind of self-consistency. You can state it very clearly on a high level, and you can state it very clearly if you go into all these nitty-gritty details. And along a lot of ideas that are supposed to be super transcendent sort of miss the mark when it gets down to the details. You find contradictions. And